I have
is me.
I have one swear in my presentation.
Okay. Oh, it is live. I think it's live. Hi,
Hey,
everyone.
hey everybody.
All right, hold on. We're going to start the webinar soon because technically we have like 4 minutes. I wonder if this is live on LinkedIn yet. Oh, yeah. No, it's starting in 4 minutes. So
Okay.
it's live through Restream,
Hmm.
and it's maybe not live yet through LinkedIn. And it's not live yet on Zoom. No, it's live. It's happening. Okay, never mind. I am so incorrect. I'm going to press start webinar
Okay,
and
cool.
we'll start recording. And we're not getting started yet, folks. We're going to spend the next 3 minutes doing witty banner
Mm.
and then we will do the presentation.
Do you have any good jokes, Gianna? Any? I only have dad jokes anymore. That's all I've
Oh,
got.
I have a set. Hold on. And hold on 1 second. I have a set. Hello, hello. Hello, Adelaide. Hello. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. We'll start. Until then, we're going to be telling jokes back and forth. So if you have a good joke, oh, let me set up the chat so people can comment and chat. Sorry that I didn't do that before. All right. So if you have a good joke, drop it in the chat. Um, okay, so I have a set and I don't remember it. So you go first, David.
Oh, you're putting it on me. My son is he reads a lot, and I have a degree in English, right? So we like jokes that are about language.
Oh.
And so he's always throwing out the ones that match kind of match that. And now I'm blanking. I'm thinking of all the punchlines and not the actual jokes. Maybe it could be like Jeopardy where you give the punchline and then people have to come up with the question, right? Like what if we just gave the answers to the jokes and people had to come up with
I don't know.
the
I think that I don't, I'm not to be a Debbie Downer, but I don't know if people, if that would be
that'd be the reverse
interesting.
of
I
it.
think that'd
Yeah.
be wrong. What is it though? I'll have to remember and come back there. I'll send everyone an email after after the webinar with what that joke
With the
was.
joke. So
Yeah.
he so the one that he brings up all the time is this the scarecrow and it's why was the scarecrow promoted?
Why?
Because he was outstanding in his field.
Oh,
He's
that's a
outstanding.
good one.
Do you remember those? What were the popsicles back in the day that had the jokes on the popsicle stick, and you had to eat the popsicle to see the answer to the joke?
Yeah, I think that was on multiple popsicles, but I know
Was
what you
it?
mean. I remember that. Yep. I remember
Um,
that.
it was the popsicle brand. It was the popsicle brand itself. I
Popsicle
keep
brand
forget.
popsicles.
Yeah.
All
um,
right. How witty is this pre-webinar banter? Oops, let me record. Let's
okay, there.
record as well so we don't forget. All right. All right, folks, we'll get started in just a minute. Just a minute.
Gianna, which bear is the most condescending?
I don't know.
A panda.
There. That one's cute. That one's really cute. I like that.
I don't know. I don't know anymore. This is my life now. I have two kids, so I just corny jokes are.
That's awesome, honestly.
Our family is we're big on The Office, the TV show The Office. So we have a ton of that's what she said jokes. Anytime there's a good opportunity to throw that around the kitchen table. And, my daughter's 12 and my son's 15. So they're old enough to kind of like get it, but not get it.
Yeah,
Um, so that's always fun around the dinner table.
that's fun. All right. Hi, everyone. We'll give it just one more minute because usually we start like a minute or two after the hour. So, welcome to the joke show. Actually, I'm going to take oh, I can't take the screen share down. Yeah. Welcome to your afternoon pun escapade. No. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Where the Story Starts Personas. Thank you so much for joining. We'll get started in just a minute. We'll let a few people kind of, you know, come into the room. Usually it takes a minute for Zoom because Zoom always wants to update, right? Where are you from? Put it in the chat. What's your role? What interests you? In this webinar today, we have David Ebner. He is CEO of Content Workshop. He's a super famous speaker. He spoke at Cyber Marketing Con 2023. Sorry if that got loud in everybody's ears. And he had a wonderful keynote at our conference in December of this previous year, all about storytelling and cybersecurity. And it's a fun topic because while we often talk about content optimization and CRO and dwell time and is this technical? Is this not technical? Is this too technical? Well, can I sell this to the CFO and the CISO, right? We talk about all these personas. Um, we don't often actually talk about the art of storytelling in cyber. And so David spoke about that at Cyber Marketing Con 2023. A quick advertisement, Cyber Marketing Con 2024 will be held in December of this year, 8th through 11th in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The ticket website will go live very, very soon, like at 4:30 p.m. today. So next
Really?
week, make sure. Yeah. Well, okay. You said really, because I think I've mentioned a few times that the ticket website is going live.
Well,
And really it is, because guess
okay.
what? It's Friday and at 4:30 p.m., like everybody's gonna leave, so it better be live. But yes, tickets will go live hopefully today at 4:30. And I'm saying all of this to introduce our amazing speaker, David Ebner. Today, it's almost like a second part of the storytelling session he did last time. Today, he is going to share about personas, which is really important to us in this security field. So we're 2 minutes after the hour. Let's get started. David, before I pass the mic over to you, I have to do housekeeping. So, folks, we love interactiveness at the Cybersecurity Marketing Society. If you've attended any of our other events, you know that we love, hi, Lori, that we love to have comments, chat, questions. Honestly, if you want to come up on screen and ask David a question yourself, we're totally down for that. We did that on our last webinar. It was lots of fun. So make sure to put your comments, your questions, anything you want in the chat. We will address it as it goes. David will be speaking and I'll be watching that Q&A box and that chat and interrupting him nicely when questions come in. Um, and David, I would like to pass the mic over to you. Can you introduce yourself and what you do, and then let's jump into it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Gianna. So I'm David J. Ebner. I throw the J in there because those that you saw my presentation at Cyber Marketing Con understand why, but it's an SEO component, right? If you search David Ebner, you're going to find other people that aren't me. But if you throw the J in there, it's all me, baby. So, David J. Ebner, I'm the president of Content Workshop. I founded the company 11 years ago now, this month, 11 years, almost to the day, 11 years ago. Um, so we've been doing this for some time. We are a brand storytelling agency. We're really just a bunch of artists that are disguised as marketers. We walk around with marketer, glasses and fake noses and stuff, right? But we're just artists, and we really care about telling brand stories. So yeah, we're going to talk today about where the story starts, personas. To outline this presentation a little bit, I'm going to give you some overview information on the front end. We're going to talk about personas, and then we're going to talk about the practical application of personas for most of the presentation. I love personas. I know that they're not in vogue as much as they used to be, which I think is silly, but they're not quite as sexy as some other things, but they're extremely important, right? It's the homework that allows us to do the other stuff. There are plenty of resources out there about how to build personas. We'll talk about a little bit of it today, but as a caveat, we're not going to dive too deep into kind of the typical questions that you answer in a persona. We're going to talk about how to build them, but mostly about how to apply them. And yes, please, everybody, keep adding where you're from. In the webinar chat, I see Lori Robb is in Akron, Ohio. I grew up in Barberton, just south of Akron. They're in Summit County, which is not many people from that area. So it's really cool to see that. I live in Dunedin, Florida, a tiny little town on the Florida coast just outside of Tampa. All right, enough of that. Let's get started here. So there's an old saying among creative writers, which I am one of, that goes something like, "If it's written for everybody, it's written for no one." Any type of content that we create must be designed for a specific individual, right? And we use personas as kind of these fictional stand-in characters that map to our personas. Is every single person in that group identical to the persona? Absolutely not, right? That's why they're a fictional representation. But this leads us to this concept of aim small, miss small, right? The more precise we aim with our content and developing our marketing, the more likely we're going to miss by a smaller margin, right? Which inevitably might still get to our persona. So that's a thing that we focus on quite a bit. Marketing personas have become kind of caricatures over time in both a good and bad way. And I saw this marketunist piece about personas and all the different types of personas. And I'll share this with you afterwards so you can have a little fun with this as well. But I think the one that we find most common on this list, at least I have found, is the filed away, the last one. The only persona that doesn't work is the one that's not used. That was part of my presentation at Cyber Marketing Con, and a lot of people took pictures of that slide and shared them on LinkedIn, which is really cool. So anyway, that kind of sparked this idea for the presentation today. We need to know who's using our product, right? Who is best served by our offerings, and we need to pinpoint common situations, priorities, motivations, and habits which lead to behaviors, and those behaviors lead us to how to market to these individuals, right? If we know their behaviors, we know to where to put our message in front of them and which message is going to be most prominent, right? There's all sorts of problems with personas. So we'll talk through a few of those briefly, but we should couch mindsets, attitudes, and habits into our personas and not just make them about demographic information, right? Demographics and personas, two separate variables, right? We have this persona here. Elizabeth is 27. She's a nurse. She enjoys making TikToks, but she has a 9-month old baby at home, right? It's a lot of demographic information. The important thing is to remember to translate that into something that's usable, right? When we translate all that information, we realize that Elizabeth's main priority, right, is saving time. She's got very little time. Anything extra has to happen after hours. So if your solution can help save her time, she is going to be very much on board with that solution. If we just focus on the demographics and some kind of off the wall information about an individual, we don't really get to the main feature or benefit that they're excited about. Personas only help when they connect the experience to the solution you buy, right? That's extremely important. Buying is an emotional experience. It is. No, it doesn't matter what you're buying. You could be buying a huge, software platform for a multinational corporation, or you could be buying something, at the dollar store, right? It doesn't really matter. It's still an emotional experience. We feel something. And typically what we do is we purchase things based on emotion, and then we justify later with logic. And a great example, I ride motorcycles as a hobby. And I have one, and I had to convince my wife, right? The efficacy of me having a motorcycle. And now, just like any other motorcycle rider, I want another one. You never want just one motorcycle. You always want more than one, or you want to upgrade, right? So I want one that's bigger, that's faster, that I can do some, more stuff with because that excites me. That's a feeling, that's an emotion. And I would just buy it if I could, but I have to justify that with my wife using logic. So I'm saying things like, actually, me being able to go faster is good from a safety point of view, right? If I'm in a tricky spot, I got to get out of there. And if my engine's not big enough, I can't get out of there, right? Anyway, I've yet to win that battle. I'm still stuck with my current motorcycle, but we will take it one day at a time. The war is not over, as I like to say. All right. Another persona problem is having uninformed personas that have not been connected to our sales and support teams. We do this. I mean, I've been guilty of this in the past, but we really have to talk to the frontline support individuals that are working with our target audience, because these are the people who have already bought from us. They really should be part of our target audience. You can talk to a sales team and ask them about the event that led a customer to seeking your solution. What was the primary pain point, and what did they hope to accomplish? When you win a sale, what was the thing that clenched that sale? At what point in time did you know you had them? When you said something, they perked up and they said, "We need that exactly," or "We need that problem solved." What were those things in the conversation that can greatly inform your persona, right? And what ancillary features of your solution does a customer not even know exist, right? If you're promoting features and your support team is saying like nobody uses those or even knows that those features exist, maybe it's not worth your time to market it, or maybe there's some work to do on both sides of the house to make sure those features are being properly adopted. So how do you actually make your personas work for your brand? And the most important thing is to start at the root. This is for all good brand storytelling. We need to know what problem we solve. Before we really need to know that problem, we need to know who our target audience is, right? Who do we solve the problem for? Just because you're really good at something doesn't mean you have an audience to sell that solution into, right? Luckily for everybody on this call, we have that. That's why we have companies and we all work there, right? But that's an important piece of the puzzle to back into. And how is that person's life better after it's been solved? We talk a lot about business solutions and how our products and solutions actually solve business problems, but they also solve problems for the individuals buying as well, right? To find a solution to a problem in your job is going to help you, climb the corporate ladder potentially, or, get that bonus, that incentive at the end of the year that's tied to that problem or whatever it is. There are personal benefits, right, to these solving these work problems. We always have to start with our hero, right? The hero of the journey. We've heard this endless times, but this is our persona. Our target personas are the heroes. And, this is kind of like the art side of the house, but there's a lot of emotion tied into this process as well, too. And I like to try to put myself in that target persona's shoes and feel the feelings that I want them to feel, right? How do I get them to that place? How do I make them feel secured or empowered? How do I do that, right? What would I have to have read or engaged in or experienced to make me feel that way? And that's how we want people to feel when they interact with our brand, right? So there's an obligatory FUD statement in everything we do, and this is the time for it, right? We talk about fear, uncertainty, doubt quite a bit, right? In developing content for your brand, I think it's important to know that bravery and cowardice come from the same root emotion, which is fear. You cannot have either of those without fear, right? I think the difference is in that root emotion is how we decide to react to it, right? If we use that emotion to create like a safe, albeit boring place to shelter from a storm or a career, that's one thing. If we use it to ignite bold action and we go outward with it opposed to inward with it, that opens up a lot of possibilities, right? And remembrance, I think, is important. Um, you know, Perhaps another truth here is that cowardice is somewhat of a selfish act that benefits only the individual, whereas bravery, right, is unselfish and benefits the group, not in the industry as well. Outside of that, right? People don't like to be scared into purchasing something or scared into making any decision. Because the second they're not scared anymore, or there's a solution that empowers them opposed to scares them, they're going to move to it. That's just human nature. We don't want to be scared. I still don't understand why people, I don't watch horror movies. My wife and I, we don't like them. But like our kids love them. And I'm like, why would you want to pay to be scared? I don't understand it. But there's some sort of exhilaration in it. But for the rest of the human population, most of us don't like to be scared. Certainly not in our workplace, right? I think a lot when I think of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, it reminds me of the Brothers Grimm fairy tales, from way back when. Um, they all had a purpose, and the purpose to those fairy tales was to scare kids into not doing things, right? You can think of all of them, and everyone ended in some sort of horrific, inevitable fate for mostly children or individuals that didn't heed the warning, right? Um, but I like to flip the script on that because there's another side to that story, and we don't have to look very far. At least I don't here in Florida to find the other side, and that's Disney. Disney has done a fantastic job with this. Many Disney movies and stories are based on Brothers Grimm's stories, right? Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Rapunzel. There's more that I'm not remembering, but like they're based on these very scary fairy tales, but none of them are scary, right? Because all of those stories, Disney, they take a flip on it and they still present a villain. They all have villains, and they do a really good job of creating someone to dislike or hate in their stories, right? But instead of making it about scaring the main character into action, they empower the main character into action, right? And that's the big difference, I think, too, and something for us all to take away as we talk about cybersecurity marketing. All right, the obligatory FUD conversation is over. So let's get into it, right? Let's get into some real examples of personas. This is an example client that we work with, and they provide a privileged access management solution that helps make zero trust possible. They have two main personas. They have many personas, but these are two that we help them develop. One is an IT security director, and the other one is an OT director, operational technology director, right? Our IT security director sits at the center of the strategic technical spectrum, oversees daily activities of security technicians, enforces strategic priorities dictated by the CISO, loves being in the trenches with the team, and thrives on high stake problem solving. It's great. Probably similar to a lot of y'all's target audiences and personas. The OT director is very different, right? They manage an industrial operation like a factory or a plant. They ensure that production targets are met, facilities are safe, and budgets are adhered to, right? Um, they're responsible for industrial assets and processes, but they are not versed in cybersecurity at all. Not at all. Demand for change often comes from above with a new compliance edict, right? All right. So before we move forward more on this front, it's personas are only valuable when they're used, as I mentioned at the top, right? So if they're only valuable if they're used, we need to know how to effectively use them and not just look at them and say, we're building this campaign. Let's read this over and then let's muse how these could be used. We connect those two pieces using message mapping, right? We talk about our personas. We talk about their challenges, what solutions match those challenges, the solutions we offer as a company. What are then the outcomes and the benefits to that? And that gives us kind of like the root human emotion around engaging in our products and solutions, which is pretty cool. So we focused on the OT director with this message mapping, and we're going to talk about the challenges and solutions and outcomes, right? So for this OT director, one challenge is that the operational technology systems are tough to modernize because they can't be paused, right? Another challenge is that the organization relies heavily on third-party vendors, and they have little visibility into who's connecting to everything that they're doing. Along the first challenge, the solution that the company offered was to retrofit the existing environment without disrupting or interfering with it. Like we can fix this without affecting, nothing has to be paused, right? So that's a great solution. The outcome is the director can extend modern controls like MFA, right, on OT environments and legacy infrastructure, which is a great outcome for them. And the benefit, of course, is reduced risk of downtime, disruption, and compliance fines. So we go all the way across the board with knowing that challenge, knowing that the solution that matches that challenge, and kind of really putting ourselves in the shoes of not just the business outcomes, but the benefits to the company and to the individual. And we do the same process on the bottom here, right? We have that they rely heavily on third-party vendors. Well, our solution gives contractors access to assets rather than a network at large, enables session recording and control. The OT director can secure third-party access without adding friction to the contractor's workflow. And then the benefit is greater ability to perform forensics and no longer dependent on the vendor's cyber hygiene for security, right? Um, so just an example of kind of like the practical application. Knowing these individual steps in the persona process allows us then to talk about message in medium, right? I think too often we focus on we need something to go out on social. We need something for this newsletter. We need something for this medium. Then we back into the message. And then we might actually talk about how we're solving problems in there too. But we really need to start from the beginning, talk about the personas, and then work our way all the way to message and medium last. Easier said than done, I know, but in theory, that would get you a better piece of content that would align with your personas. So when we're doing this, it's important that the features of your product don't speak for themselves. It's important to know that. Benefits answer the question, so what? Right? We need to answer that question, so what? And the benefits really do that. The features themselves, if you're just marketing on features, nobody's going to have an emotional experience with a feature. But if you answer that so what question and get into the benefits, that's where the emotion really takes hold. So we do this little benefits matrix when we get down to it, right? The same feature can offer very different benefits for different personas, as you all know, right? So for this IT security director, the limitations and realities of the OT space aren't relevant. It's not even something they think about, right? The ability to retrofit an existing environment means less change management and smooth adoption. However, for the OT director, the user takes a back seat to the availability of the OT systems. It's not user focused, right? The ability to retrofit an existing environment means securing the legacy systems the operation depends on. So similar benefit, but different outcomes, right? And this is a kind of a grid mentality of how that works. The feature, the benefit for the IT security director for the single sign-on experience, it eliminates bad user hygiene by taking security out of their hands completely. And for the feature of agentless deployment, right, it saves the expense and hassle of issuing managed devices to employees. The same features for the OT director have different benefits, right? The single sign-on experience implements security without requiring any technical knowledge or adding steps to the user's workflow. And the agentless deployment, vendors can get to work faster and work more productively, right? So again, it's important that we focus on the features by persona. We focus on the benefits by persona as well, too. As you can imagine, and y'all have seen this, you can have a lot of buying personas, right? Especially if you have a company that has multiple divisions, right? And each division has a different solution, which is going to have maybe a different persona, but certainly different outcomes and different benefits, right? So this grid system can get quite large. It's important just to focus on the lowest hanging fruit first, obviously, and then build from there. Don't let the largeness of the thing stop you from taking the first step. I think I'm guilty of that. I'm sure many of you are as well. It's human nature. So let's take the next step even, right? We know we have to build personas. We know that we have to find a way to distill those personas into benefits and outcomes, right? But then after that's over, how does that inform all of the marketing content that we develop? Right. So Gianna's saying she's absolutely right. When it comes to personas, do one, then do another, then do another. Don't try to eat the entire elephant, right? As they say. I don't know who's out there eating elephants. Let's stop. Let's stop that behavior right now. But that's the saying. All right. So how all of this can inform your content, right? Let's get down into practical applications. You can literally build a flow from left to right, from starting point to end point of how all of this will come together, right? If you have a listing of your personas, you should do keyword research. So we'll do a little pause here for a second. Not everything is grounded in traffic from search engines, right? And with generative search, who knows how all that's going to come together anyway in the future. But knowing which keyword phrases not only match your solutions, but are common for your target persona, that's going to give you tons of content ideation, right? Knowing what they're searching knowing how they actually search certain things, knowing what facet of a large issue they focus on is going to inform all of your content. So doing keyword research is not just a practice in search engine optimization for your content. It's a practice in understanding the conversations that are happening around your specific solutions and your persona. And taking it even a step further, you can go to places like Reddit and other forums to really find out what people are talking about in these areas, what kind of questions that they're asking. You don't have to only do keyword research based on, whatever Moz or SEMrush says. You can take it even a step further and actually look for the conversations themselves. So little off script there for a second. But if we know the personas, we know what they're searching for, then we can start with ideation. Now, it's important to differentiate ideation from the content itself. Ideation is just a process of brainstorming ideas, throwing ideas on a sheet. You don't have to commit to any of them yet, but you want to talk about them and brainstorm them, right? Don't think you have to come up with a title as soon, like title first. Don't do that, right? It's really important that the content itself, the shape of the content dictates what your title is going to be. If everybody just looks at a sheet and says, well, that won't work, that won't work, that won't work, that's not the point of the conversation, right? So ideate, think about the different topic areas or interest areas based on your personas in your research. And then you can start to work into the pieces of content. Through this process, we realized in ideation that there's obstacles to implementing zero trust, right? Like obviously there's obstacles. We have to secure remote workers. We need tips for getting the most out of security audience. We need emerging cyber compliance and insurance, right? Like all of those are important things to talk about. How do we actually deliver that? So that's the message. What's the medium in which to deliver that message? And there's plenty of, as you can imagine, ways to approach that. We've developed checklists. Buyer's guides are fantastic. We're going to talk about that in a second here too. And then obviously there's the good old fashioned blog. You can do tons of series on really any topic you choose, right? So I think it's important to, once we figured out who our personas are and we've developed them, we figured out proper messaging, then we can go do the fun work, which I would think is the fun part. I think all of this is fun, but the real fun part is then developing that into a message and a medium that you can push out into the world and then get feedback and actually help people. Regardless of how big or small that help is, like we can actually help people there, which is great. So, using your personas to identify relevant and compelling content topics and themes, it's important to consider the challenges, interests, and goals of each persona. We just a fun fact: when we talk to any potential partner, the first conversation we have is tell us about your goals and what is getting in the way of you accomplishing those goals. What are your challenges? That tells you so much. It tells you so much about a target audience, right? If you can dive into their typical daily challenges, and how those challenges are stopping them from reaching their goals, and if you can provide them something that is the salve, right, for that injury, then you're going in the right direction. So spend some time thinking through those pieces, specifically, what questions they typically ask. This is where the sales team is going to come in handy for developing content, or your support customer success team. And obviously, what solutions are they seeking? And usually when challenges are all laid out together, themes emerge that can be used to tie all of your solutions together. And then you can start to have some like pull through solutions in your content. The content is about X. There is actually a product that's aligned slightly with that we can pull through and work into our CTA or something along those lines. And Gianna, I see we have an open question here.
Oh, we
Yeah.
do. Hello, I am the floating voice. No, I have a face, don't worry. All right. Would love to know, what third-party sources do people go to see what cyber personas are talking about? What sites and or podcasts and or other channels?
Well, I mean, breaking through in cybersecurity marketing, right, is
We
definitely
do
a podcast that I would.
we do interview security folks, and usually we ask them very nosy questions about what the heck do they actually do all day, and what their problems are, and how do they buy things. So that's true. Thank you, David.
Yeah, no
But what
problem.
else?
Just So I kind of left I answered this already slightly, but I go to Reddit. And I know, I mean, take it or leave it, right? But there are a lot of pros on there asking and answering questions, and you can find threads. I'm trying to look them up as we're talking here. I don't recall the ones that I follow specifically. There's tons of cybersecurity threads on there. There you go. The Reddit channel for cybersecurity is a great place to start. There's tons of spin-offs too, right? There's tons of channels and communities in there for you to eavesdrop on. That's what I do. It's part of my job, right? Is to know what those conversations are. So those are great places. Obviously, there's tons of webinars that are out there that you can target as well too. There's a plethora of sources to find out what people are talking about. We go to events too. That's a great place too. Even if only digitally attending, those are great sources.
The society has a list of podcasts that we keep. So if you're
Ooh.
a member, you're able to access it. And if not, we do have an older list that we have published on the site. So podcasts are good. Cyberwire has good content,
Hmm.
daily news. Since security is, I would say this is less persona and more in the here and now. There is a lot of breaking news happening all the time in security. So you'll see a lot of conversations around threats that are happening and attacks that are happening. But there are some very good podcasts out there that are talking about what people are talking about and also even focus on the careers of
Hmm.
cybersecurity practitioners to get into that. What you were saying before, David, that like, how does this help someone in their career? Like, what are their aspirations and goals? Like, if you need that perspective as well of like, what do people actually do at their jobs?
Yeah, that's fantastic. All great, great source. I mean, just even like y'all probably already have like alerts set up, Google alerts for activities and things that are happening. I just subscribed to, I don't know if it's a new newsletter, but it's new to me, but the Cyber Y, our friend Tyler Shields and a few others are producing. That's quite good too. Anyway, that's how I like to stay up on trends. Hopefully that's helpful. So we need to use the challenges. It's really great to start at the top of the funnel with a lot of these use cases, right? And figuring out those persona challenges are going to allow you to understand the top funnel even better. They know they have a problem and they're looking for solutions. So, what are those challenges for this client that we were discussing today? Is zero trust even possible? Like, is that just a misnomer, that idea, right? What tools are built specifically for OT? Should my company get cyber insurance? Interesting question that a lot of people ask that could lead into top of the funnel content for your brand, right? Depending on who your persona is and how do we get through a labor shortage, right? And then of course ask again. I don't want to hit this too hard, but ask your sales team, ask them, what are what are people talking about what they need to accomplish in their job? Again, what are those challenges? What are those goals? What are the limitations that they're seeing? What's frustrating them on a regular basis, right? That's really great. Oh yeah, Gong is fantastic. Great call, Jackie. You can actually get in and they'll actually pull out, I think, synopsis and they'll pull out like key phrases and things like that. And Gong will provide you some like analysis too, which is really cool. You got to tie those features to broader goals and challenges, right? There's plenty of solutions out there that help do what you do, right? But you have to answer that so what question. And the way you do that is through differentiation. The details matter when it comes down to comparing two like-minded solutions, two solutions to a similar problem, right? Um, and by diving into those details, you're going to set yourself apart. You're going to provide value, which is key in any marketing campaign. You got to provide value first, and you're going to, build long-term emotional trust with that audience, right? So it's really important to dive in deep into the details. So a lot of people ask us like where do we start, like what are the first pieces we should develop if we're going to develop persona based content, and these are the ones we always start with if none other like percolate to the top, right? But a buyer's guide is fantastic. And a buyer's guide is not designed to tell people why they should buy your solution, right? The buyer's guide is to answer all the typical questions asked by somebody in the process of buying a similar solution. We have buyer's guides, we produce them for our clients. We have a buyer's guide for every single solution that we provide. But if I'm, for example, if I'm looking to buy a zero trust solution or whatever it may be, like what are all the common questions and what are all the things I should consider? In the end, you can throw a CTA in there for yourself, but the idea is to build trust with those individuals, right? So buyer's guides are fantastic to create for every persona you have, for every solution you have. And it's really cool. Like you can develop buyer's guides and just make small tweaks for the various industries or personas or verticals. So one piece of content can really generate multiple pieces down the line too. So those are fantastic. Do an ROI focused piece. What's the return on investment for solving this problem? Which is always helpful. Like talk about the finances. You can have case study information in there. Again, try not to make it too braggadocious about how great you are, and just talk about how it's best to solve this problem and how it can save money for your line of business. Those are great pieces that sometimes get shared up the chain, right? We talk about managing up every once in a while, but like some content is for the end user and not the decision maker. But these types of pieces can float up to the top when they're shared internally. So it's important to focus on that value first aspect. We love a cost of doing nothing piece, and again, try not to hit the FUD over the head with this piece. But what if you don't do anything and don't try to solve this problem, right? What are the costs to that? There's tons of lost opportunity cost in not solving your problems, right? So having a piece that's about the doing nothing, that's great. Also, as a caveat, your sales team is having conversations with people and they're going through the sales process and they get stuck at whatever deal stage that they're at. Having a cost of doing nothing piece is a fantastic resource for a sales team. We call them sales enablement tools to reach out to somebody who's stalled in the sales process and say something like, hey, we haven't been able to connect lately. I saw this piece that we created and I thought about you. I thought it might be helpful. It helps spur kind of the conversation in the sales process. Obviously, it can pull people in the top of the funnel, but this is a great kind of bottom of the funnel sales enablement tool as well. So how does this work in cyber, right? Purchasing decision dynamics in cyber are complex. I don't need to tell you all that. You have to make the case for the solution for non-technical stakeholders sometime, right? That's important. And this is best done through storytelling, right? Constantly update your key personas. That's important. Add to them, edit them. Don't put them in a file cabinet, right? And pull them out every once in a while when somebody has an idea. Um, what you're going to say to a CISO obviously is very different than somebody who's non-technical, like an OT, right? That's why it's so important to develop content by persona. If you're mapping out your content that you're developing, you should have every piece should be tied to a persona. Every single piece should be tied to a persona. I think that's a very important part of the process, just to keep that front of mind of who this piece is designed to serve. What topics do you need to cover? We work with a lot of large cybersecurity companies that are like, do we really need to write an article that's an explainer of what a threat vector is? Like our target audience knows that. They do know that, but it's also a great entryway to be an educational resource for the next crop of CISOs, right? I think it's important to even do that fundamental content if you've gotten through all the low hanging fruit first, right? Um, and how do they fit into your overarching story and brand, right? That's important to tie all of this persona information and how we're going to speak to these personas to kind of what you envision the overarching brand being, which is really just a feeling. Like, how do you want people to feel when they see your logo? Um, it's your overarching brand story. All right, so we've had a couple of questions throughout. I have a baked in question slide here. How are we doing on time, Gianna? Are we okay?
We have time, and
Okay,
that's a
cool.
very nice slide, David. I like that it has like blue sand waves in the
Do our
back.
best.
That's great. So, who here has questions for David? Feel free, pop them into the chat, put them in the Q&A, or even raise your hand and we'll invite you on stage to ask your question live if you want to chat with us directly. And until then, I think I can probably sling a bunch of questions to you, David, or talk about my own experience building personas. One thing I do want to hit on, we hit on it before, but the like starting somewhere, like start with one is really important because I often get into this humongous, or I did when I was head of marketing and working in demand gen at security companies. I would get into this like humongous project phase of life where it was like, okay, we're gonna do personas. Okay, how many do we have? Okay, 10. All right, let's go. And that's an overwhelming feeling, and it
Yeah.
just start with one. How would you figure out your first persona to target, David?
Yeah, I would go, we call it the coffee spill methodology. It doesn't really work as much anymore. But like think about spilling coffee on a target and then kind of like what does the coffee stain touch? From Persona's point of view, I would go straight to my sales team and I would say, who is the typical buyer and how do they typically hear from about us? That's what I would ask them. I wouldn't just go after the buyer. I would go after the how they hear about us first, because sometimes they'll directly come in. Sometimes the buyer will be referred to them by somebody else in the chain of command at where they work or outside of that. And that'll tell you kind of look for commonalities there. Look at the last 10 sales or 20 sales and look for commonalities. And that's what I would pinpoint as my first persona. And then I would do the coffee spill. Like, all right, we spilled coffee right there. Like who else does it touch? What are the next ones? And kind of go from there.
What about if you have no sales and you have no
Oh,
historical
you're start.
data besides going to the society and asking,
Hmm.
your fellow marketers in security, what would you start with, David?
Yeah, that would be good. The industry in the knows are where I would start. I would probably, if you're a startup, essentially that's what we're talking about, right? I'd
Mhm.
look to our
Or very
founder,
unsuccessful,
a
maybe.
super unsuccessful company that has
Yeah.
apparently a lot of money and no sales because they have a
Hmm.
marketing team, right? Um, you know, I would go to our founder of the company and start there. Typically, founders of a lot of these companies were, practical application individuals prior to being a founder, right? They did this work every day. So they're going to know. It's probably going to be people like them, honestly, that are the target of the person they used to be when they first started working in this industry. That's a good place to start. You can do market research. You can hire a market research firm if again this fictitious company has a ton of money, right? So like they're going to go out and hire a market research firm to tell them the answers here. If you're private equity backed or you're working with a VC, they're going to be able to tell you some of that information too. You can hire a consultant, but I mean, I don't know. I would, if I have none, I would go to the person who built the product the
And be
first
like, why
time.
did you build it? Who is this
Why'd
for?
you
And
build
hopefully
this?
they have an answer.
Yeah,
David, will you take the screen share down so that we can have full
yeah.
face up here? Awesome. And we have questions coming in. So let's hit up these questions. All right. Holly wants to know. Oh, lots of questions. Okay. At the company I work for, we have so much content being written, videoed, etc. by our technical teams. The problem I have is I'm
Mm.
constantly working backwards to see how that content connects with our personas, finding gaps, collaborating with sales, etc. What advice do you have on working backwards? That's such a one. I think that's a cool problem to have. I know it's a problem or,
Yeah.
a little challenge, but it's awesome that your team is so content forward in the first place. So, David, what advice do you have?
Yeah, I think you have to build a culture change a little bit around that. And you're not going to do that overnight. Um, I wouldn't suggest continuing to say, well, backwards is the way and let's keep doing it that way. It doesn't mean stop the train. To Gianna's point, like there's so many companies that have no content train running. It sounds like y'all have a good one, which is great. However, I would start to put into place the structure to do it the other way around. Just infusing like a as you're talking through your content, put in there like, all right, we have these target personas. Let's do this backwards for this one. Let's backwards. Let's do this forward technically for this one, and let's talk about this persona first, and then work through it that way. And then they'll start to see the benefits of this. Whoever's developing the content, of course, because then they're not going to build content just spinning their wheels, right? They're going to be able to produce less content because it'll be more pinpointed. Aim small, miss small. You guys are aiming very large if you're trying to figure out who the persona is after everything's been developed, right? You're probably hitting the nail on the head sometimes, but my guess is not all the time because essentially that content's like kind of created for everybody
Yeah,
when you
it's
start.
created for like nobody. It's just like we've made this. It's like great. Who's it for?
Yeah.
So maybe also another. It sounds like to me, and also that it's an alignment. It's just an alignment issue because we have this voracious team excited to create content, which is amazing. Um, it might take either some meetings with them
Hmm.
or some sort of process. Like if they submit content to you, if they send you a file or upload it to a form, right? Maybe you have like a process involved. Maybe there is a box that you add that is who's this persona for?
There you
Choose
go.
one. And you put the work back on them. And it might be even easier because they might be like, oh, yeah, this is definitely for the security engineer, right? So, and then last comment would be bring it up the chain. To whoever's above you to sort of like um get more alignment across all the orgs, all the units of the org if you yourself cannot work if if they're not receptive to these sort of things. Good luck with that. Let us know how it goes. All right, we have another question. If you're basing this is interesting. If you're basing your audience on demographics from social media, is it obvious that the most common end user is your first target persona? So I think this question has multiple things in it,
Hmm.
and we are potentially not understanding exactly what you mean, anonymous. So if you want to post again, so if you're basing your audience on demographics, I guess you're saying that, when you create content and people come to your content from social, is that your persona because they like your
Mm.
content? Is it like that backwards thing that Holly just asked, but maybe you're still trying to figure it out? Um,
Yeah, there's a difference, and I think that's you're probably hitting the nail on the head there, Gianna. There's a difference between who consumes your content and who your target audience should be, right? That is again, it's like fishing with a net versus a lure, right? Like we're blasting stuff out there, and we're seeing who is interested in it, and based on who is interested in it, we're going to build our personas. That doesn't mean that that's not a target persona, but it's certainly not. You're going to have a ton of people who view your content that have no interest or the ability to buy your solution. It's going to happen, right? That's that kind of like aim small, miss small methodology we like to use by starting with the persona first and then working backward or forward.
Yeah, if you have more to add to that, Anonymous,
Yeah.
if we didn't answer your question, try again and we will get to it because you will be at the bottom of the queue and we will get to it. Don't worry. All right, we have. Oh, this is just a good comment. Who has the biggest, hairiest, most expensive, most urgent problem in the company? I like that question. I don't think that's a question for us, but I do love that question. I'm going to put it in the chat. That's like a really good question to ask. Oh, I think that's for how to target your persona. That's
Yeah,
great. How to target your first one.
that's
Great
fantastic.
advice, Margie. Love it.
Most expensive problem is a good way to. I mean, if you want budget thrown at your solution, it's the most expensive problem that's going to get budget first, right?
Exactly. Who is this making who's who what this problem who is this problem making insane and like want to quit their job
Yeah,
and it's costing the company millions of dollars. Like if you have a solution like that, that's amazing.
yeah.
All right, do you think here's a question from Adeline. Do you think there's benefit to adding role-based personas on top of ICPs we're already targeting in our marketing efforts? Okay, so adding role-based personas on top of ICPs we're already targeting in our marketing efforts. So,
Yes, the answer
yes.
I'll say yes.
Go ahead, David.
Well, ICPs are fantastic, and you all should develop them, right? You know who your ideal, customer is, but that doesn't mean it's the only customer. Like we talked about that coffee spill methodology. If you only produce content for anybody who's ever bought your solution in the past, you will never find a new audience, right? So I think it's important to know people whose problems you can solve that don't really align with people's whose problems you've solved in the past. Anyway, so I'm a big I do think you need both. That's my advice.
Yeah, my take is ICP is a company profile, is
Yeah,
ideal customer profile. And again, this is funny because security, like marketing has just as many acronyms as security. So with like different definitions. So when I talk ICP, I'm talking like mid-market financial company, employees, 1,000 to 2,000 with a revenue of 3 million, right?
sure.
That's their sort of ICP I'm talking about. So I absolutely would advise to add that role-based personas on top because who works there, right? You're
Right.
not just selling to a company because a
It's not
company is
a,
not a person.
yeah, the company's an
It's a
inanimate
building.
object, right? Like
Yeah,
it's a, yeah.
absolutely. All right. Here's another one. Or this is a comment slash question, or is the question about content for buyer persona, decision maker with money versus
Mm.
users who need to be on board, but probably not the buyer other than PLG? Is that so that's an interesting thought experiment, right? So the question about content for buyer personas, so it is true, right? A decision maker, someone who writes a check, who literally approves a purchase may not be the user of the solution and often is not, especially at large companies. At a small company, you are potentially working with like a check writer and a user, depending on who. So this is a really interesting point in that content for buyer personas, decision maker versus user will be different, right, David?
Yes, absolutely. And I suggest, I mean, you're going to start with the lowest hanging fruit. It's hard to get content developed for somebody who's not buying your solution. Like selling that in the boardroom is not easy. However, knowing that they're part of the pathway into the decision making process is inevitable, right? So you have to provide value to those individuals if you want them on board, even though they might not be the decision maker. They might be a stakeholder still, right? In that process.
Yeah. I would say a lot of decision makers, and David, I'm sure even on your team, you get this, right? The team brings a solution to the awareness of the buyer, of the decision maker, right? Decision maker
Yeah.
might be aware of a problem, might not, but users and teams and lower sort of influencer people as opposed to buyers um, uh, are bringing the solution forward and up to the attention of the decision maker so they can make a purchase and making a case to the decision maker.
Mhm.
Hey, boss, I do want this sim because of
Right.
this reasons, right? So
You're
there's that.
absolutely right. And you're absolutely right about our company. Every solution we find is coming from grassroots efforts in here. So hopefully everybody's got a company where they have a flat enough model where people can find a problem, propose a solution, and feel heard, right? But it happens every day.
Awesome. We have one more question, then David has two closing things he wants to tell you. So hold on. I have a startup for cybersecurity awareness for kids. Kids aren't our target audience though. Smart,
Hmm.
because they can't buy anything.
No, they usually don't have money. Yeah.
They don't have the bank account yet. It's a grandma persona who finds our company online. Oh, that's so interesting. How would we engage a 65-year-old user who might not be tech savvy but has a tech savvy grandchild? We have a
Oh,
persona created. Oh, that's so
that's really
interesting.
neat. The things you think you'll never hear, and then you do, right? That's a challenge. It's a fun challenge to overcome for sure. I would probably produce some connective pieces. I would think about like how do you want the grandmother and the grandchild to what would you like them to connect over, right? And how do you then translate something that would make sense to both audiences? Because inevitably, if you want to talk to the grandmother about her grandchild's, tech usage or something along those lines, right? Then it's got to resonate. It's got to like tie back to something that that they share already. So look for common shared connections between those two individuals and how you can then put your product into some of those connections. That's a challenge, though.
Oh, I wonder if you could do something around like Grandchildren's Day. Now I'm thinking campaigns. I'm thinking like,
You're going straight to you listen. You're
I know,
going
I'm
straight
going
to
straight to
message and
ads.
medium. Yes,
Yes.
yes. But
Yeah.
I think of what I do. My grandma. What do I do with my? We bake cookies together, right? Like we celebrate holidays together. We have shared emotional experiences talking about where our family came from and the important things of the past and what were my parents like when they were kids. No, there's no way they were like that, right? Um, you could probably tie some of those relationship based conversations that they have to your solution, possibly.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I love the idea also of cybersecurity themed cookie baking kits. Like there's so much you could
Yeah.
do. There's like you could be super creative. Also, I would look at like Facebook and
Hmm.
for sort of tech platforms for targeting. All right. All right, David, I there's a few more comments, but I want you to have time to tell people who you are, to finish your slide deck because I was
Sure.
like, all right, take it down. Put it
No
back
problem.
up.
I just want to add that if I can be helpful to you and y'all that are watching this live or in the future, 100 years from now, watching this, hopefully we're still doing this, right? But if I can be helpful, I want to be helpful, right? If you need help building personas and building those message maps and stuff, reach out to me. We say at Content Workshop that our friendship is always free. So, even if you don't have budget or solution to like develop this further, we're going to talk to you about it because the truth of it is that this is fun for us. If in a world where we're all independently wealthy, we would probably just do all of this for free. We're not in that world right now, right? It's a solution that our company offers, but in the end, please reach out if you're struggling with this. Anonymous user, please reach out. I want to hear more about your solution. Here to help however I can. And to do that, you can, boom, you can reach me obviously anywhere on social media. You can scan this QR code with your phone right now if you're watching on a laptop or
David,
a
is this a
desktop.
phishing attempt?
It is.
Or
You should do this,
phishing?
and I'm going to, yes, it's my
Take
way
over.
in. This is
Yeah.
my way in. So yeah, that's I as Gianna alluded to, I have a fantastic team here at Content Workshop, so much so that I've kind of like worked myself into obscurity. So I've got a lot of free time. So if I can be helpful to you, or you just want to jump on a call to chat about some of the things we chatted about today, or anything else, feel free to schedule some time with me. I'm always excited to chat.
Oops.
That's it.
And I just dropped David's LinkedIn in the chat as well.
There you
David, thank you
go.
for coming on. That was a really good presentation. Lots of fun. We'll share the deck to everyone who registered. We'll share the recording. This will be on our YouTube channel and probably on Content Workshop's YouTube channel. And thank you. We are the Cybersecurity Marketing Society. We are the place to go to become a better cybersecurity marketer. We have over 2,900 members, all marketers at about 800 plus cybersecurity products and services companies around the globe. And we're here to help you do better cybersecurity marketing in our crazy, fast paced, constantly changing, highly technical industry. We want you to be successful. So if you have ideas for more webinars, more content, send us a note. And thank you again, David, for being on. This was so fun.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.